I was out long before gay marriage, long before the charter. In the 70s, there were incidences in the workplace. Today, you could probably consider those instances a hate crime. They didn't decriminalize homosexuality in Canada until probably 1968 or 1969. So, in those days, considered criminals. And this is long before there were any rights. So, for me, the union made a big difference. My name is Garth Karen. I have been a USGE PSAC member since 2001. I've always been an activist for GLBT issues. Been involved long before Stonewall. I came out at the age of 17. Have gone through the 70s, 80s, 90s, up to today, being active in the community. As the years progressed, and it got better in the late 70s, early 80s, but then at the same time, we took big steps back because of the crisis in the community with AIDS. So that put a double whammy on everybody because we're living with that plus trying to get accepted in the mainstream society. Very difficult. For me, being a union member is part of the whole package.
My name is Timothy Hunt. I am a card-carrying member of the Public Service Alliance of Canada for 25 years. Started with the government in 1988 when I was appointed in September, and I was immediately shuffled out to the postal plant in Calgary. When I first started at the customs, I was open as 1988 would allow. However, I had a friend, we were opening packages, and our job was to take the assessment, put it on the box, close up the box, and then send it off into Canada Post for general delivery. You open boxes, you find interesting things, and I acted in that position, and I opened boxes and saw interesting things, but I was doing my job near the person who was keying the stuff, and out of my earshot, so I actually didn't hear these words, but the words were related to me by an officer later on, that she had pulled out a very large latex item that was bright pink and said things like, well, apparently what she said, and this is hearsay for me because I never heard it, was, "I bet you Timothy would like this up his ass." And that was on the job line. And the two officers who heard it were a little younger and less, old world, and were like offended, actually offended by what she said. And she said it as matter-of-factly and just continued working. And it wasn't until lunch when I found out that the two officers had pulled me aside and said, "This is what was said, and we want you to put in a grievance." And I'd never done the union thing. I'd never looked into what the union thing was. I knew they took money off my check. I knew they got us a good deal for our jobs. I was making $16,972 was my first job, and I was like thinking I'd won the lottery because I was working in a pizza place for $10,000 as a manager. And I was like, oh, I have to do a grievance. And at that time, there was an officer who eventually became our branch president, Steve Pellerin-Fowley, and he told me what I could and couldn't do. But it took 3 years for it to actually go through to fourth level before the person was given the justification of what she did and the discipline. So I had to settle for a 1-week suspension. And it was very scary to me to be in an environment where people thought they could get away with it.
My name's Steve Pellerin-Fowley. I've been a member of the PSAC since 1981. I think whether it's GLBT or youth or workers of racially visible, it's about strengthening the collective for collective interest. The union movement is only as strong as its members and its level of militancy. Its willingness to take ownership of rights, of collective agreements, to police collective agreements. And so in the human rights area is also protected under the collective agreement. So I see it all as part of policing the collective agreement. I mean, it's got a bit of a social angle to it as well.
In Alberta, we weren't included under the Alberta Human Rights Act until 2010 or 9 or 10. I can't remember which it is. We were not included in the charter in Alberta.
1996 was the year that the contract included same-sex benefits. But of course, in Alberta, you couldn't get that completely because you had to pay for your Alberta healthcare and then reimbursed through putting it in for a claim, and they would pay half the money back to you until such time as the Alberta government would allow them to actually pay the full bill. But they couldn't pay our bill at that point. So it was another stepping stone on our way to being a total employee rather than being somebody who was having to take a back seat to things. I learned a lot working at the postal plant, but what I found at the postal plant after this starting of a grievance was how people treat you differently because you're bucking the system and you're homosexual, and why are you even employed with us? You're a deviant. And I'm like, no, I'm not a deviant. I was born this way and I will stay this way till the day I die. But now, that was the start of my personal quest to make sure that everybody behind me would never have to go through the crap I went through at work. What drives me the most is I want to be in a world before I die where being homosexual has absolutely nothing to do with your character or what you can do at work. But we still have a lot of people that are mean, very mean. They don't want to share the world with anybody who doesn't do what they do. But in this world, everybody is what they are. They are human beings, and as such, they should be treated with respect.